Hello, everybody, and welcome to the July edition of the Carrier's Edge webinar. This
Hi,
is July, isn't it? Yes.
it
I'm
is
Mark Murrell,
July.
co-founder of Carrier's Edge, and I'm joined today by Jane Jazrawy, our other
CEO
co-founder
of,
and
yes.
valiant CEO. And we are talking today about building support for online training within the organization. I talked in the description about the pitch and how it shouldn't necessarily be something that makes you feel like you're going into the Shark Tank and you're going to get grilled by people all the time. But it is something that people should be able to do pretty easily with limited hassles. So there are some best practices there. So Jane and I are going to talk about those best practices, and let me just kill my picture here. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to get the organization on side to move training online. So this may be a situation where you are a manager and you need to kind of sell it to the executive within the company. It may be the case of your manager and you need to get other peers on board, other managers. It could be that you're an executive and you need to get your management team on side, or maybe it's a risk consultant. We see a lot of our partners that have to go and sort of persuade their customers, usually insurance people that are going in that need to persuade their customers that they really should be doing something and make it something that they buy into. So we're going to talk about that. And what's also a little bit interesting and timely about this is that Jane and I, a week and a half ago, were at the large collision conference in Toronto, which is not about accident reconstruction. It's actually a tech conference. And so it is loaded with tech startups who spend all of their time pitching on stage and at the trade show area. So we listen to a lot of pitches. So we're sort of going to talk about the things that work and the things that don't work in terms of presenting an idea and getting people on side and finding ways to do it in a fairly succinct manner. So that's what we're going to talk about. Now, this session originally was a webinar that I had done for a while that I think it was called 5 Ways to Build Support or something like that. And that it talked a lot about executives. So it came out of a space where I was talking to a lot of safety managers, a lot of risk management training managers at fleets who were struggling because when they went to try and get approval to move training online, they couldn't persuade the executive. They didn't really understand how to talk to the executives in a way that made sense, in a way that resonated. So this webinar was originally put together as a way to get those people to understand what it is that the executive is thinking about, how to speak a language that they're going to respond to. And so then after that, we would talk a little bit about how to get fellow managers on side and how to get drivers on side. And as we were sort of reviewing this last night, Jane made the really good observation that everybody's response ends up being about the same. So you may have some slight variations in how you want to say things or put some things together. But when you go to present an idea for something like this, it often generates a similar kind of response, regardless of who you're talking to. So that simplifies things a little bit. So
do we want to talk about what that response is?
In a minute, after these messages.
All right.
So let's sort of have a scenario here where we've got a fleet that is, where there's somebody in the fleet who wants to move the training online, is thinking, hey, this might be the right way to go, and needs to get everybody else on side. So how to do that? What are the things that are going to make that more successful? What to expect when you go and present it, and some things that we see where people kind of fall down. That's sort of what we're going to talk about. And yeah, so anytime you present it to somebody and you're bringing up this idea, hey, let's move the training online, or it may not even be training. I mean, what we're talking about applies to anything. It might be, hey, I want to do a new mobile app for our drivers, or I want to change our applicant tracking system or HR system, or change the scorecard, whatever, the response ends up going, as Jane put it very nicely yesterday when we were prepping this, how much work is this going to be for me? That's everybody's first response. How much work does this create for me? And that will be drivers, that will be other managers, and executives will be thinking about that too. But added into that from the exec side is, what's it going to cost, and what are we going to get out of that as well? So those are the things we want to have prepped.
And one thing to remember, it's not just technology. So you talked a lot about technology. This is any change that you're trying to bring into a company. So if you want to hire someone new, if you want to change a process, everybody is so it could be anything. Everybody is so resistant to change. It could be a comp package
or something, or a bonus plan or something like that. Yes, all of these things kind of apply, and they're the same kind of situations. And if you are clear on how to work through them, you can have much more success. And so when we were roughing this out, we came up with, it looked like 4 different things that we thought were keys to success. So I will sort of articulate each of those, and then I think we can kind of go through them and then talk about some failures or where we see people falling down. So the first key to success in this situation is always going to be having the ability to articulate what this new change does and why it's useful. And so that one we're going to spend a good chunk of time on. But you had another observation that was a key to success that I thought was really cool that I want to talk about as well, and that's enthusiasm. That it needs to be presented in a way with particular passion and energy. Item number 3, don't make it a sales pitch. Don't make it like you're selling something, and make it more of a conversation and sharing a vision rather than sort of just doing a traditional sales pitch. But understand also who's important in that decision-making process. It might not always be the CEO. There might be other people that are really going to be the influencers that make a difference. So there's some 4 broad areas that we'll talk about, but let's start with the ability to articulate what the product does and why it's useful. So this one seems obvious, but I think this is where a lot of people fall down, because they kind of know instinctively where they want to go with it and what they want it to do, but they don't necessarily have clarity or have that ability to put it into words that make sense to other people. And you can say, oh, this thing is going to be great because it's going to be making things better. Well, okay, how is it going to make things better? What is it going to do? When people come to you, Jane, and pitch stuff, one of the things you've said is that you expect them to do their homework and have a plan. Absolutely. So what are the things that they need to talk about that are going to help you to get a sense of whether or not there really is benefit?
It's going to be their familiarity with the product. I need to know, how much do you know about it? Can you answer questions about details about it? So if you are fuzzy on how the product actually works, so if you're looking at CarriersEdge, it would be, well, how does a driver log in? Can you log in from a mobile app? And you can't answer that, that's a problem. I want to see details. I want to see that the person who's pitching me or who's talking to me about it has enough of a vested interest that they have actually looked at the website, that they have talked to someone from the company, that they have some understanding of what the product does and why it's going to be effective and for which part of the company. But
yeah, and that kind of speaks to the sort of the broader job of that executive, which is going to be sort of having a business vision and executing the vision, building the value of the business, sort of higher level strategic plans, and needing to fit into those. So yeah, exactly. You're kind of thinking about it in terms of your broader vision for where the business needs to go.
Right. So the person who's talking about the product is not going to know necessarily what the business vision is. I know what that is. And the more detail that I have about what they're trying to do, the more that I can start thinking about how much work it's going to be for me. Is this going to be
Actually,
something that fits in, or is it going to be something that I'm going to have to rejig some things, or is it a complete change of everything that we're doing right now?
but that's an interesting point. I think in most cases, the broader vision for the business should be pretty clear. And in a fleet, the business strategy is going to have to be improved safety, improved cost of operations, so that we can improve our bottom line. There are fairly broad strokes things that every fleet is going to be working on. So how is this particular thing going to fit into those? How is it going to fit into the larger objectives?
And not only that, but the timing. Is this something where it may not be, the broader business vision may not have been communicated yet? So maybe, if I'm a carrier, maybe we're going to move to a larger terminal. Maybe we're about to break ground. Maybe we're about to buy another carrier. Maybe we're about to lose a customer. So you don't necessarily know what is going on in the executive's life. And so so sometimes it may be a no just because it can't happen. Like if I'm buying or selling part of the company, it can't happen. So it might be that, but it also might be,
there may not be things that everybody's aware of. So that's fair. So yeah, you do want to focus on sort of the broader strokes of what are known to be sort of stable objectives that everybody's going to be working on, and be able to articulate how this new service or product or whatever other change is going to support those objectives. So,
and I think it's, if you want to convince someone successfully, then you have to talk about how it's going to fit in. That fitting in part is really, really important, because if you just say, I want this because I like it.
Right.
Well, I don't care.
But also, even I want this because it's going to make my life better. Well, that's good, but how does that help anybody else? And what does that mean? If your life is better, what is the next step? It's a little bit like people talk about the 5 whys of investigation. If you keep asking, why did this happen? Okay, well, why did that happen? You keep going through that. By the time you get to the 5th one, you'll get to the real source of the problem. It's a little bit like that when you're sort of trying to communicate the value of doing some different things. If I do this, then this will happen. And if this happens, then this other thing can happen as well. And that, I don't know that you need to get to 5 different levels on that, but you can get some real clarity on how something is going to make a difference to the business. So if we were looking, for instance, at online training, okay, it's going to make things a lot easier in terms of doing more training for drivers. Okay, so how is that going to benefit? Well, if we can do more training for drivers, then we can cover more territory, do it more frequently, and improve our risk profile. Oh, if we improve our risk profile, that's going to lead to cost savings down the road and all those other things. So look at it in sort of multiple levels like that, and be able to articulate specifics about how it is going to relate to something that that other person is going to be engaged in and very much interested in.
I think that doing almost like a mind map, those diagrams where you start in a circle with, okay, online training, and then, you have bars out to how it's going to affect safety. How's it going to affect operations? How's it going to affect the drivers? What is the benefit to each of these different groups? And so the 5 whys, you can do it as a graphic, do a drawing and figure out how that's all going to happen. So it may not be that you have to do a PowerPoint presentation to your manager or to your executive about all of these things. But if you go through that process, then you'll be able to articulate it. When you have to write it out, then it's much easier to say, because you've already found the words. You've sat there, thought about it, found the words to talk about it. If you don't have the words, or you don't know what the words are, then if you're working with a vendor, call the vendor.
That's a really interesting approach, the mind map idea. I hadn't thought of that, but it's a really good way of kind of breaking it out and documenting it. Like you say, it clarifies it when you write it down. It doesn't have to be a PowerPoint presentation, a few bullets, but what it will do is clarify the slight differences in each of the audiences that you're talking to, because those bullets for the executive are going to be different than the bullets for operations, or the difference between, different bullets if you're including maintenance or some other group in there. But it also builds into one of the other things we talked about, which is the importance of sort of planning and having a review, sort of thinking about it, not just sort of pitching it off the cuff or pitching it sort of, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Hey, we should do this. It'll be great. Well, if you put some time into it, you do that mind map, then you've got a really good game plan that you can go to each of these people and say, I want to do this, and here's why it's going to be beneficial. Okay, and now you go to this other group, here's why this is going to be beneficial for you. And it's a slightly different story for each of them, but you'll have that documented and reviewed and planned out in a way that makes it a lot easier to convince people.
And I don't want to give the wrong impression that you shouldn't talk about it until you have this, huge elaborate plan. You can talk about it, like talk about what you're thinking of, but don't pitch it. Say, so online training seems to be an interesting direction. Let me think about it, and I may want to talk to you about it in a couple of months, and put something on the books that you can work towards. Executives like that because it's in the future and you don't have to worry about it right now. And but they know it's coming, and they can, and you can just say, I'm thinking about it. I would like to explore this idea. I would, when people come to me and say, I'd like to explore this idea, I'm like, yeah, you go right ahead. It's not going to cost me any time or money, really. So it's, for me, it's a very low bar to entry. But if you just talk about the idea of exploring, then there's no risk.
That's a really interesting element to add in there as well, is people sort of wonder, when should they be talking about it and who should they be talking to at what time? There's really nothing wrong with giving a heads up that, hey, I'm thinking that this might be worth looking at. I'm going to explore it. Yeah, because then you're not surprised by it. It's not necessarily something you have to keep under wraps until you've got this complete plan. No, I think that's a really good observation. And it's a little bit like, we see this, and we joke about this on the news all the time. Anytime the government has a big announcement coming up, they never just announce it. They always have this sort of process that they go through. There's a leak. Yes, sources are saying, unnamed sources, and every news outlet has the same leak from the same unnamed sources at the same time. And then, big surprise, the government announces it the next day or something. They always do that same process of kind of softening the ground before they actually go into it. And that is a fantastic. Yeah, we observe way too much. But for something like this, where you're looking at something new, especially if it's going to be a major change for the organization, start getting that out there, start getting people used to it. That's a really good communication plan. And again, not just online training or even system stuff. It could be a process like, we're going to change the way the scorecard works. It might start with, we're thinking that the current scorecard has got some issues. We're starting to explore some things. We're thinking that we may want to change it. Yeah, nobody has to commit to anything at that point, but they have a sense that something might be coming.
And I do this all the time, where I'll say, it's almost to remind myself as well, is that I'm thinking about doing this. And it generally, if I say that to you, for example, that something else is coming, that I'll probably go back to it, or that's an idea that's going to end up being something. But you also have the opportunity to say, oh my God, that's a terrible idea. So you also get a sense of what where your obstacles are going to be. So if you mention this to a couple of people, you mention it to your manager and they're like, yeah, sure, okay. Or you mention it to your coworker who's like, oh no, I did that at my last company, it was awful. Then you have more information. And you can start exploring that information. So why was it awful for this person? Or why does this person hate the idea of online training? Or there's all kinds of different reactions. And those are the things, if you don't do that at the very beginning stages, they're going to surprise you later on. And it's going to be, oh no, what are we going to do about this obstacle?
Yeah. We actually see that with customers, and it's smart customers that start talking it up, and they talk to their drivers about it. And the drivers, who often have experience at different companies and you're bringing them in from different places, they can provide feedback on what worked and what didn't work in other places. So you can end up getting some of that research done and putting some of your plan together based on their information just from talking to them. Yeah.
And I will tell you that companies do not talk to drivers about online training. It's the
Not
one
that
thing
often.
that they really don't. I think that it's kind of usual to talk about things like, if you're going to change all the seats, you're going to talk to the drivers, or you're going to change equipment, or you're going to put in a new GPS or a new ELD or something like that. Yeah, we should talk to the drivers. But for some reason, how you do learning does not get any driver input, really.
Well, actually, it's not just that. It's all systems, sort of software stuff, back office kind of things, which is why we added that question in the best fleets evaluation. The corporate questionnaire, we added the question about how they decide on technology, non-trucking technology. So online training, mobile apps, driver scorecards, any of those kind of back office things, HR system, how do they do it? And for the longest time, nobody was really including drivers in that process at all. So definitely, if you're thinking about doing something like this, get drivers looped in. Not all of them. Go to a few, the more senior drivers, there's a driver committee. Yeah, go to the crustiest ones that are going to give you all of the reasons not to do it. And then you at least know what you're starting with. But that also leads into one of the other points that we noted, which is understand how big of a change you're asking for, or how much is it that you're asking for. And online training, in theory, is not that significant of a change, but it depends how much the organization is doing to begin with. Is it, if they're not really doing anything, they're not doing any training whatsoever, then it could seem like a bigger change. And that's going to take more planning. So you want to understand what's happening now. Is it a big change you're asking for? Is it a series of smaller changes? How disruptive is it going to be? And that's going to be something that certainly executives are going to care about, not just the money, but how much disruption to the business is there going to be here.
And I think, that measurement of disruption is a really good way to describe it. If you have large disruption, if you are going to propose something that's going to be a wholesale change, so sometimes online training is a wholesale change. If you've been doing classroom training, you've got a driver trainer or safety manager who's been doing classroom training and loves it and wants to do it all, for all time till they retire, it's going to be a big disruption. It may not be a big disruption for the drivers, but there's big disruption for that person, that department. So you have to look at all the disruptions. Like, it's not just the company, it's all the different players. So is there going to be disruption to the drivers? Are these drivers, very scared of new technology? Have they had a disruption? Have they, what's happened already? Are they used to it? Do they understand? Did you have a terrible fail with your last disruption? So the easiest way to deal with disruption is, if it's going to be big, then chunk it up into smaller bits. And so make the disruption it's like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time type of thing. But if you take the disruption and say, okay, I propose that, say you have no online training right now, you have a lot of pushback from driver trainer who's been there for 80 years. Say, okay, I want to try this I'm going to just get a free trial and play with it. And then I want to bring in 2 drivers. I want to bring in a driver who is really against it and a driver who's really for it, and sit them down in a room and go through the experience. So then that's a small step. That's a small disruption. That's not going to be that terrible for anybody. And then, okay, now I want a small group and I want to get the feedback and find out what everybody thinks and think about how it's going to help the people who are going to be the obstructions. So then you move it bigger, and then you move it bigger. And then, because we see this all the time, where fleets only start with 20 drivers. And that's perfectly fine. That's actually a road to success, because if you start with a small number of drivers, then you can work the kinks out. And then you can expand, or you start with one of your fleets and then you expand it to another of your fleets. And so doing that small start, and then so the disruption over time is much easier to deal with than disruption all in a short period of time.
But that also comes back to needing to get approval for it, or getting support across the organization. It's less of a scary thing to present, to say, hey, we want to do a small pilot on this thing and see what happens. We want to do a bit of a trial for a couple months with a few drivers and see what they think. We believe it's going to help us, but we want to try this out.
So you look at it kind of like as a process map. So you start by introducing the idea and saying that you're going to do all the work. Like, I'm going to go research this. And then your step is to say, okay, how about I just try this with a couple of people, do a small start. And then, you know, you're kind of worming your way into the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good approach. And also it makes it a lot easier for people to approve, because they're not having to think about, oh, is there a big cost involved? You know, do we have to have a big ROI chart here to show us what we're going to get from it? You know, we're just trying something out, and then if it works, like you say, we can work the kinks out and then expand from there. But
everybody will let you try it for free for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
They want you as a customer. And so if you kind of push that 2-week trial out and say, oh no, we're thinking, and including us, will let you.
But that you know, your comment about the driver trainer who's been there for a while and is crusty and doesn't want to change anything, that's a really good example of understanding who the actual stakeholders are for something like this. Because you might go, if you're a safety manager and you've got a training department, you've got, you know, trainers, and some of them are crusty and don't want to change anything. You could go to executive and say, I want to do this. It's going to improve our safety. It's going to allow us to do more training. The ROI looks great. And the executive says, yeah, fabulous, go for it. And then you go and try this thing, and you end up having it scuttled by these crusty trainers who don't want to do anything, or who don't support it, or find other ways to undermine it. So it's important to understand who really, you know, who are the competing interests, or what are the competing interests? Who are the other people that are really going to be people that can help or hinder it, and what can you do to get them on side?
And I think that point about who's going to undermine it is really important, because if you don't get people on side who have a strong opinion, you get it pushed through because you have executive support, people will, if they don't agree and they don't like it and they're angry with you, they will undermine it, and they will have a smile on their face while they're doing it. So you know, you can have the best rollout that you possibly could have designed, and then you have drivers who hate whatever ELD you're putting into place and will basically play dumb. Say, I can't use it. It's too difficult. It's too complicated. And you know that it's not true, but what are you going to do? You know, so basically they're using kind of that passive aggressive technique to just, you know, to basically refuse to change because they don't like the change.
And drivers will do that, and they will usually
Executive will do that. Are you kidding? Everybody.
Well, I'll get to that in a second, but drivers will often position it not as it's too complicated for me. They'll position it more as what do we need that for? We all know how to drive. I've been driving for 40 years. What do we need this for? Right? They sort of deflect it that way. But other managers will do it, and it will be, I'm too busy. I just don't have time in my department. And that's their way of sort of deflating it. Yeah, getting it off of their plate. So you definitely need to have them on side as well, and be aware of what their interests are, and make sure that they see the value of it. Going back to that first point, make sure that they see the benefits for them as well. But something else to keep in mind is understanding what those competing interests are. So do they have their own initiatives that they're working on? Are they angling for the opportunity to disrupt something within their own departments? And is that going to come into play when you try to, you know, present your ideas? What else is happening in the organization?
Or do they want to implement a competing product that you want to implement? Because we've seen that too. where, it's basically the battle of the products.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to move on to some of the other points here. Enthusiasm. I don't think we'll take a long time on that one, but this is something that you noted that I thought was really, really good, because people overlook that you don't necessarily have to be bouncing off the walls on something, but if you're presenting something and you don't have an obvious interest, you don't have an obvious passion for it, it's really going to make it a lot harder to sell. So,
well,
position.
I saw this at Collision.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Collision, because it's a bunch of tech companies all talking about their products. There's a lot of pitches that are basically, you have to be able to talk about your company and your product in 40 words or less, and you have to explain how it's going to change some sort of industry and use AI as well. This is what the tech industry
this year
right
was
now,
all AI. Yeah.
This is the fashionable thing. But what I saw, and so the pitches, there was actually a pitch contest. So you'd get like 10 minutes to talk about your product in front of a little audience. And then as you got further and further into the pitch contest, you got to be on a bigger and bigger stage. And the one thing that I saw that I was like, I don't know why this person is doing this, or maybe somebody was sick, but she was the most disinterested pitcher I've ever seen. It was like, her stance was like sort of down, and she was talking in a monotone, but her words were saying, this is going to change the industry and this is going to be the best thing. And I'm thinking, what are you and she was reading from cue cards. Like, if you're trying to pitch your product and you're reading from cue cards and you don't even sound interested, no one is buying your product. No one.
Well, and that happens internally as well. And I think sometimes people get nervous. That sort of goes into the next point about don't make it a sales pitch. People have this idea that presenting an idea needs to be a really formal thing. You need to have the PowerPoint deck, or you need to do a ton of work, and you need to present it to a group and all of that. And it doesn't need to be that. It can be casual.
Coffee.
Yeah, it can be a casual discussion. You do want to plan that so that you're doing it at the right time. But it doesn't have to be this huge formal thing. And it doesn't have to be, I guess it's kind of weird. It doesn't have to be a high energy sales pitch like you're a telemarketer or like one of these people on a paid programming infomercial or anything. But you do have to have some enthusiasm for what you're doing. You have to believe. I mean, if you don't have that energy, if you don't have that passion that the thing is actually going to work, don't bother pitching it. Get somebody else to do it, or just move on to something that you do care about, because nobody's going to care about it more than you do. So you've got to care.
Sometimes that passion is just going back when you hear a negative response. And I'm kind of avoiding the word no, because sometimes no is no. Sometimes, there's no money. And, so we've just lost our biggest customer, and I can't even comprehend spending money on anything. In fact, I think you might be losing your job next week, kind of thing. So at that time, just take the no, and just, if you get the sense that if the discussion is going nowhere else, then take the no. But you can always revisit even a no. 6 months down the line, if you still believe in the product that you're trying to pitch, then go back to it. And if it's not a no, it's a not right now.
Yeah,
absolutely. That enthusiasm that, what, I've been thinking more about the product and what we could do with it. I think it's really, really going to be helpful because of X, Y, and Z. And if you are continuing to think about how it could help over a period of time, then you're going to have a much better sense of how it's going to answer the questions from all of the different parts of the company. So that passion is not necessarily how you deliver your request for something. It's also how much you can tie it into or bring it up as a possible solution for whatever problem it is, or how much you revisit it. Maybe you do it at a performance review, talk about how if you had this product, this and this and this could happen.
I think that's a really good point, is people get hung up when they hear a no, or they get worried that they're going to get a no, but recognize that no often means, yeah, not right now. It doesn't mean no, we're never going to do it. It means not right now, especially when it comes to executives, because most executives are not going to want to close off any options for the future that might help them. You may not be able to do it now, but you never know what's going to happen. And the example I always use for this is all of these Indian outsource companies that call me like on a weekly basis who want to offer their services, outsource development, outsource whatever. And every one of them, I'm like, I don't think so, but call me back in 6 months, because I don't know what the future holds. There may be a situation where we do want to do that. We do want to use them. And it's the same kind of thing you hear. An executive might say, nah, this is not really going to work. We got too many other things happening right now, or it's not a good time. Okay, but you never know what the future holds.
Can I talk to you again about it in 6 months, maybe?
Well, and the point that you made last night when we were reviewing this is that sometimes executives are just too tired. And sometimes that might be a no, because it's like, I just can't put that idea in my head right now.
No, I just stop it. I just can't. I just can't.
And that might really have nothing to do with the value of what you're offering. It might just be that they're not always able. And that sort of comes back to, understanding how to present it, who to talk to, and when to talk to them about it, because you don't want to talk to them when they're distracted or unfocused, or they're so exhausted they can't pay attention to it. The response from them may have more to do with them than it does you and what it is you're presenting. So
one of the things that I think is really valuable, and this is not necessarily for people who are in a senior position to you, but the taking someone out for coffee to talk about it, or to talk about and to dig into, someone disagrees with you about a product, then dig into why and talk about suggest another option, which is, well, why don't we look at both? And then we'll, see the advantages and disadvantages. Because that's another thing that we find through best fleets and trucking, is that there often isn't options. People don't look at options. They stick to, they found out about one product, and it could be ours, but they are like, okay, this is the product that we have to use. And then they don't look at anything else. And it's not an advantage to have someone only look at your product, because they don't have a good balance of what is out there and what could be better or not better for them. And I would much rather have someone not choose our product than sort of have it, have a launch kiboshed halfway through because, they just realized this other thing is happening.
Or they need some other feature.
That we're not going to build. So it's
well, that goes back to doing the homework, having a sense of why we want to do something as a business, how it's going to help, what we expect the value to be, and how we're going to proceed. The plan is that we're going to evaluate these products, and we're going to talk to different people and figure out what we need as a group, rather than just having one person say, here's what I want to do, and just sort of leave it at that. So, you said something else sort of related to that when we were prepping. You talked about build your army first, so I wanted to dig into that a little bit more. Well, I guess that's talking to different people.
Yes, it is talking to different people. It's getting people on side. I first learned this tactic when I was doing technical training at a company at the beginning of the .com. Its name was bamboo.com, but then it got bought by someone else, and then it was called iPix. They were a company that did virtual real estate tours. So they were like, it was in the late 90s, I believe. And they were doing it first. Like they were doing, those 360 tours that you could do, that you can go and look at the entire house, that are so common now. For every single listing, you have one of those. Well, back when I worked at iPix, it was new. And we were putting in a new CRM system, customer relationship management system. And it was big, and it was a big change. And we all knew it. And we'd been working on the technology and doing training documents and stuff like that. And what I did, what I ended up doing was creating a group of super users. And super users are a secret to success. Oh man, they're good. If the people who really like whatever change you're making, so I'm going to talk about technology, the people, I would have training classes because I was doing small training classes, and I found that some people just loved the tech, loved it, were really good at figuring it out, and were happy about it. And so what I did was I got a group of them and basically made them the spokespeople for the product. So they were basically the customer relation, the people who are on the phones. So they didn't have great, they didn't have a lot of importance in the company, but being a super user, they had a lot of, I mean, it's basically it's the same as what we tell people about drivers who feel like they're not very important. Well, if you give them, if they become a mentor, or if they become a trainer, or they become like someone who we acknowledge that there is experience there and that you're good at something, it elevates that person like you wouldn't believe. And this happened with the super users. And I'd meet with that group, and they would talk about the problems that people were having with the system. And that was my army, was that group of super users. Now, they don't come out of the woodwork. You have to actually go and find them. The people who, you can try a product with people, and if they really like it and are passionate about it, they're one of your super users. So keep them, because you may need them for, talking about the product, talking about it in front of a group in a meeting.
So in the case of something like online training, if you had a super user that was, or somebody who was very keen, it was a big supporter who was from the pool of drivers, a couple of drivers would be good, and somebody from operations, you'd pretty well be set. If you can go to executive and make the argument that we want to do this thing, it's going to help our safety, it's going to allow us to offer more training more regularly to drivers. We've got this driver, these couple of drivers that are on side that agree that it's going to be helpful, and we've talked to operations and they're on side with it as well. That starts to sound like a pretty easy decision for executive. Then the just question is going to be, well, what's it going to cost me and how long to get it fully rolled out? And those are easy things to have answers to. Yeah.
And what you've done is, instead of using a sales tactic to overcome objections, you've created the structure. You've created a way to make the idea successful before, like, you're gonna, the path to implementing your idea is really easy because you've already done all of these things. And even though you don't have permission or your mandate or anything like that, that whole just suggesting the idea, then doing a little bit at a time, you're using it, but you're just not officially using it. So it's a really easy way to take all of those disruptions and make them go away. Because the disruption, it can be to time or money. Those are the things that people are going to go, no. But if you make it super easy and smooth and get everybody's agreement with the super user frame of reference, like you use the model of super user, then it will just start happening.
Yeah.
And those super users will talk it up.
Yep.
And that will gain a lot of agreement from everybody else.
Yeah. All right. So let's flip it around for the last segment and talk about places where people fall down, pitfalls and things to avoid, and where we see these things going sideways. And so the number one thing that I see is people not being able to articulate their numbers, not knowing the numbers, not being able to articulate it, that kind of thing. So,
like, when you say numbers, you mean ROI?
Well, I'm thinking there's a couple of different things. So the cost is the most basic one. If you're going to ask for something that's going to cost money, you've got to have a sense of what that actual cost is going to be. And for that, it's always going to be more than just the license fee, whatever it is that you're buying. So the subscription fee for the online training is great. You're going to know that and be able to put those pieces together pretty quickly. But what about any extra costs for compensating people for taking courses, right? You got to pay drivers for taking the courses. So what are the costs associated with that? What are the costs associated with making sure everybody has access? Does everybody have, well, most people have a device now that they take with them, but there are still some drivers with the flip phones that manage to make it through COVID without getting on the internet, and you got to provide some sort of machine for them. So are you going to put up some machines in a driver lounge or something else? Like, how are you going to get access? So have a sense of that, and it may not be precise, but even if you have a sense of it, that really helps. So if you don't know the numbers, when you go to talk to like the finance or you go to talk to the CFO, there are going to be questions that are going to be awkward. So yeah, not knowing the numbers is definitely going to be the number one place where people fall down, but it's also a pretty easy one to avoid.
Well, I think that the number one thing is not knowing where your obstructions are going to come from, not knowing where the pushback is going to come from. And that's, and I think that is always based on not knowing, well, not talking to people enough about it, and not necessarily selling the idea over and over again, but not sort of getting a sense of what other people think. You know what you think. You've already made your decision. But what do other people think? Are you even interested in what other people
not
think?
Including other stakeholders. Just trying to make a unilateral pitch.
And if you know that someone else is really anti your idea, then that is a real red flag, because that person, if you don't get them on side in some way, you're basically fighting that battle for the rest of time.
Not enough other stakeholders, and also sort of situational awareness about the competing interests or larger business objectives as well.
I like the situational awareness, because I think I was talking about that last night, because sometimes you don't know. It's not like people aren't going to come up and tell you your idea sucks, but you have to sort of gauge people's reactions when you're in a meeting or when you mention it, in passing. Is there like, do they start to stiffen? Do they go silent? Do they say it's a great idea? And, like, not being sarcastic or anything like that. Sometimes they'll say, oh, that's a great idea. But a lot of the time, if people say nothing, they don't think it's a great idea. So you have to have a sense of where you might have some issues.
Well, it's also an emotional intelligence of being able to sort of pick up the vibe if people aren't talking about certain things in the business, but you can pick up on the sense of it. It might be that there's a particular vibe, and it can go in a lot of different ways. It might be that the business is struggling. It might also be that there's been a big crash and now there's a real problem with the insurance, or real problem with some litigation or something. So try and have a sense of that and work your stuff around it so that it supports those larger objectives. But another one that I see commonly, and the support team deals with this regularly, is unrealistic plans. That we're going to roll this out. It's going to take us no time. We're going to start it up. We're going to have everybody on side using it, and we're going to dump a whole pile of courses on people, and then magically we're going to fix our safety in 2 months. And it's never going to happen like that. It's going to take longer. It's a longer term process. Improving a safety profile, it's something that takes time. You do have to keep the regular business going while these other things are happening, while you're implementing and getting everybody up to speed on it. So have a realistic plan. Take a quarter or so to just get comfortable with it and get started, and then start looking at results in the second quarter. Right? This business of we're going to sign up for 2 months, run everybody through it, and then cancel because we can't spend more than a couple $100, like, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. And no smart executive is going to say yes to that, because it's so short-sighted and they're focusing on
it's also things. It's that whole thing of little chunks. You're going to be more successful over time if you start out with little chunks and build on them.
And recognizing that training is a process, not an event. No, you don't do it once and then it's fixed.
I like that.
And also that sort of gets right into the whole, the impact that we were talking about before. They have too simplistic a view of the impact, that it's not going to be any disruption. I would love it if people could sign up for online training and have no disruption. I mean, I look at
make our job easy.
I look at the hardware guys, and it's really easy for them. You put trailer skirts on, you immediately see the benefit. right? There's no change in there. You put a boat tail on, you see the benefit on your fuel efficiency. But with training and other software, you can't just do that. You've got to change process. You've got to change the way people work. You've got to get people thinking differently about stuff. And when you do, you can have massive value coming out of it. But if you don't, or if you assume that you're not going to have to do that, then it doesn't work out. The reality is you got to have a plan that is realistic, and you have to expect that there's going to be an impact.
Or you run the risk of, well, people ask us a lot of the time, how much can I save on whatever? Like, how much are my accidents going to go down? Or how is it, what's the ROI? Like, how many millions of dollars can I save? And it's not like that, because training is that process, and you won't know. All you'll do is notice that things have gotten better over a period of time, but you can't measure it. And the people who tell you that you have a hard number that is going to relate exactly to the day you started online training, it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, that I think is coming out of the fact that so much innovation in trucking for the longest time was hardware. And like trailer skirts are a great example. You put that trailer skirt on, you're immediately going to see that fuel reduction. And it is a testable number that is going to be consistent across everybody. So fleets have become used to that, and they just assume if I put this in, I'm going to get this. If I put this new brake system in, if I put this fuel additive in, I'm just going to get that. And it's not really like that with software, unfortunately.
Or people.
So, and
you're changing people, you're changing behavior. It takes time.
Takes time, and you have to use it the right way. How much will I save? I get that question still with people saying, will I get an insurance deduction if I sign up for this? No, because just signing up for something doesn't do anything. Once you have that plan in place, you can actually use it and see the benefit, and your loss ratio will improve, and then you'll get the reduction in your insurance. Yes, but no insurance company is going to give you a discount just for signing up for some service. So
unless they're seeing some other benefit, which has nothing to do with us.
Well, they do that with dash cams, because there is, if you put in the dash cam and you turn it on, it's going to make their lives better down the road when there are claims. But you have to be using them. If you just have dash cams that aren't turned on, that never record anything, then it doesn't really help. So you have to have a plan, and sort of wrapping all of that together. You have to have a realistic plan, realistic sense of what the impact is going to be. You do have to know what those numbers are going to look like, and break it off into chunks. So any other last thoughts before we wrap up?
No, that was it. Okay. That was
do your homework, build your army of super users. And have some enthusiasm.
Have some enthusiasm and do it in small chunks.
All right. So
with I think we can end this.
Yes, we can bring this to an end. So thanks very much for attending. And everybody will get the recording, and have a great day.
Have a good day.